Hello, my name is Dinessa Michelle Sims. I'm doing my oral today for Developmental Psychology 241. My oral subject today is Albert Bandura. The work of modeling as a therapy is based upon his work, which states that a person with specific fears or someone who needs to develop social skills can learn to do so by watching someone else, the model, to confront those fears or demonstrate the needed social skills. Behavioral therapists work with modeling techniques with success in helping children with dental fears, social withdrawal issues, and obsessive compulsive disorders and phobias. The first article in 1977 is where he claimed that social learning theory shows a direct correlation between a person's perceived self-efficacy and behavior change. Self-efficacy comes from four sources: performance accomplishment, vicarious experience, verbal persuasiveness, and physical psychological states. Now, in 1986, Bandura published his second book, which expanded and renamed his original theory. He called the new theory social cognitive therapy. Bandura changed the name to emphasize the major role cognition plays in encoding and performance behavior. So it's an advancement upon the work he did in 77, which it was the coined term social learning theory. And in fact, whenever you look in our textbook, when you look him up, you will actually see the focus subject that they actually expound upon is social cognitive theory. And this was the amalgamation from 1986 from the 1977 work. And the behavior in his book, Bandura argues that human behavior is caused by personal, behavioral, and environmental influences. Now, to go a little deeper into that aspect, since our textbook really focuses upon that Albert Bandura's social cognitive therapy is the view that emphasizes behavior, environmental, and cognitive as the key factors in development. He is the psychologist which early research program focuses himself on observational learning, also called imitation or modeling. Those are the two other names that this theory process is also called: imitation and modeling. It is learning that occurs through observing what others do. He proposes that people cognitively represent the behavior of others and then sometimes adopt that behavior themselves. The model of learning and development includes the three elements: behavior, the personal/cognitive side, and the environmental. Actually, I found him very interesting in studying him. He's still alive. He's still working on his work in today's template model. I found that some of the areas he thinks his work would expound upon is health, overpopulation of the planet, and also I saw his work in some sexual studies. It was very fascinating because I saw some positive reflections of his theory and some not so positive, actually negative reflections of his theory. One negative reflection that they actually go into detail in some of the studies is the negative copycatting, as they call it, in the non-positive connotation or format is through television, where people will see something negative and actually emulate it. In some works where there were famous people or people of notoriety who actually committed suicide, and they saw a rise in suicides. Some other negative factors they was doing some research in was in the sexual dynamic. How it was, some of the examples they were focusing on was men on men and heterosexual men and women. Whether they focused on women and with women in the sexual connotation, I'm not exactly sure. But the study was actually going into why they actually would emulate some of the aspects, whether it was one night stand or whether they were actually going into some of the studies of trying to see positive emulation in sexual protection, and also some of the dynamics they were having with people that had some a particular sexually transmitted disease, HIV, and some dynamics with that. It was very fascinating. One simple, very positive example that I did like, because I thought it broke down his theory in very real connotation ways of how it actually was a simple example to help you learn the simple process of the technique, was people who were afraid of dogs. And in this study, they had a video where they saw a person who petted a dog, who spoke to the dog, and who hugged the dog and showed positive affirmation language towards the dog, such as "I love you" or something positively said to the dog that had a physical interaction with the dog with positive speech. The thing that was interesting was the patient or the person that was afraid of the dog. They had the person actually see the video of the person in the video petting the dog, and they had the person pet the dog. The said patient test subject saw somebody in the video actually speaking to the dog, and they had the person speak to the dog, the person who was afraid of dogs. And then the third example was they actually had somebody hug the dog, the person in the video hug the dog and say a positive affirmation speech to the dog, like "I love you" or something positive in that dynamic. And they had the person afraid of the dog emulate that. Then they went and hugged the dog and said something positive. And through this process, they learned to not be afraid of the dog. And I thought that was a very simple technique that explained the process. I know in so many developmental learned aspects or theories, there's different ways where people learn, and one major way is through the visual cortex, where they maybe not grasp as much as the information through auditory alone, but through visual aspects as well. I thought this might be a positive theory, a positive technique for people who maybe learn through that method. I had a question of curiosity if they are people that kind of respond well to this therapy technique. I also had questions about when it wasn't a positive example. Say when a person loses their sense of self because they allow the emulation or the modeling to overwhelm them to such a degree that they lost the sense of their self because they tried to totally overtake a person, where it made a transition into a type of stalkerism. I don't know if that's the proper terminology, but a process of stalking. I have questions about that. I would like to find the answers to that dynamic. I don't know. That was one of the areas I do have questions about, but I saw a lot of positive ways, and I thought it was, like I said, very exciting that he's still alive. He's still working on his theories, and he's still looking at ways to apply it in today's model of living. I like that. I like the fact that it's not just a historical figure, but it's a figure that's currently thriving and living, and it made me want to call and ask him a question or write him an email. Not that, I would actually make it to him, but it's exciting to hear about some of the now psychiatrists or psychologists that's doing work on today's actual timetable. I like that aspect. But as a fellow student of psychology, maybe a developmental psychology, maybe you can find some of these answers, and maybe it inspires you to learn a little bit more than what we read in the textbook. But like I said, these are some of the aspects about Albert Bandura. He is still alive, and I find that his work is very interesting. If you look him up, you can find some interesting, like I said, interesting models where they actually test subjects and theories where they actually applied his work and see how they applied it, see what the end results findings were. And thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day and a successful learning journey. Bye.